Welcome to your astrological forecast for the week of Monday, August 1st through Sunday, August 7th, 2022. This week we do have two kind of major events, or, it's interesting how to approach this because there's two events that I think on paper look like they'd be kind of the biggest thing going on. Those would be Mercury entering Virgo and the first quarter moon that we'll have at 13 degrees Scorpio this week. And don't get me wrong, those are definitely two big events, of course. But something that seems very particularly interesting to me that is happening this week is a pretty tight triple conjunction between Uranus, Mars, and the North Node, all at 18 degrees Taurus. So this is really what I wanted to kind of highlight in these, beginning few parts of this video. All this, this volatile combination of Mars and Uranus, probably the two most volatile planets we have in our solar system, those both being right on the North Node. North Node is typically very positive with transits, so we can expect something like pushing our evolution, something bringing some positive changes down the line. But still, change is very difficult for us. Mars and Uranus being so, turbulent or bringing such dramatic change, being so unpredictable. Even if this is positive change, even if we're going in the right direction, this can still be challenging. Sudden change is difficult, especially because this is happening in the arena of Taurus. This is 18 degrees Taurus. Taurus is a fixed earth sign, so typically it represents things that we like to keep stable, like our relationship to our resources, our finances, our money. And so with dramatic changes there, even if there is this kind of positive spin on it, this is still something I'm a tiny bit wary of. Even the North Node has very unstable energy. The nodes in general, the nodal axis is unstable. So this, more than anything, really points to dramatic changes regarding our finances. Now, that includes your personal finances on an independent, individual level, but it also pertains to our kind of broad society, what's going on in the world right now. I've talked about how Uranus is spending 8 years in Taurus. It's about halfway through that. So we're in this 8-year period of a dramatic kind of makeover of how our economies work, how our world economy works, what do we value, what do we not value, how does our money kind of work, how does the whole system work. All that is dramatically changing over this 8-year period, and it's not a consistent, steady change necessarily. I mean, maybe that's part of it, but certain days more than others, certain time periods within that 8 years, you'll see kind of a sudden like breakthrough of change. I'm kind of picturing like earthquakes. Uranus is associated with earthquakes. Earthquakes might be the continental plates gradually moving. It is a gradual process, but it's not something that happens consistently. The pressure will build and build and build, and then suddenly there's this big shakeup, and then it'll be stable for a little while, and then you have a big shakeup again. So that's what we're going through with our finances during this 8-year period. And this week specifically, with this triple conjunction, is where I would expect some, one of those push throughs, the breakthroughs, the earthquakes, so to speak, especially with money. And anyone who has Taurus placements, look to, especially if it's close to 18 degrees Taurus, whatever placement you have at that area, there's going to be some dramatic change. There's going to be some unpredictability, some volatility. Maybe this is good. Maybe it's driving your evolution, like I said, but it's still a dramatic change. And depending on your own astrology, you may or may not be receptive to change. Change is something hard for all of us. And like I say, change can be good, but too much change will kill you. So it's something we have to work to embrace here and be as adaptable as we can. But I didn't want to gloss over Mercury entering Virgo and the first quarter moon because those are two events that you'll definitely feel this week. Mercury entering Virgo is nice because it's in domicile and exalted there, so it will support our kind of cognitive functions, especially with Sun in Leo where it's in domicile, and then Mercury in Virgo where it's in this kind of glorified position as well. This just indicates enhanced thinking, enhanced communication. We are more able to be very precise with how we describe things, with how we articulate things, with our detail-orientedness, etc. So that'll last for the next few weeks as long as Mercury is in Virgo. So that's pretty nice for sure. Especially any of you Virgos out there or people with Virgo placements in general, you will especially feel this kind of enhanced cognitive ability. And then last but not least, before we get into the day by day here, we do have the first quarter moon happening at 13 degrees Scorpio. This is pretty interesting as well. This is volatile. I'll get more into it when I get to Friday, where the first quarter moon will actually happen. But it's an interesting one for a couple reasons. One is because when we combine Sun and Leo with Moon and Scorpio, these signs, they're both fixed signs. They have a lot in common in terms of being like very passionate, and both Leo and Scorpio deal with themes involving creation, but in very different ways. Both are, creating something through their passion, but Leo's doing it in a much more like fun, childlike way. There's like a childlike energy about it. Scorpio is creating through a much more intense internal mechanism, through like evolution. So when we blend these two energies, they actually clash together pretty hard. Yes, they are both loyal and fierce and passionate, but they are those things in different ways. Scorpio, again, is very internal. It's a much more like kind of rigid energy. It's more, it takes things much more seriously, versus Leo, which is kind of a more fun, playful energy. So these clash pretty hard, and the first quarter moon is going to be conjunct the North Node, which really makes this extra interesting. And I'll save the rest for Friday. But yeah, dealing with these multiple aspects, not only the triple conjunction on the North Node, but also the first quarter moon near the South Node. Incorporating this nodal energy into the week is really going to make things feel like larger than life. It'll bring about some like kind of odd coincidences or synchronicities, I guess I should say. With that nodal energy, it'll almost feel like eclipse season. So it's almost like you're living in a movie or something. There's things that happen that may be seemingly unlikely or improbable that just kind of magically seem to work out, or so this can bring about some kind of dramatic change this week for sure. So kind of an interesting blip in things in what would typically be a pretty stable time in Leo is actually pretty interesting this week. So yeah, with all that being said, let's kind of get into the day by day here, starting on Monday, August 1st. Okay, so we start out Monday, August 1st with Moon in Virgo. Moon is kind of traveling through the last part of Virgo here, you can see. And this is nice. So I think I said on the last forecast when Moon entered Virgo that this is pretty cool, combining Moon and Virgo with Sun and Leo. This is just the beginning of the lunar cycle, so we're just kind of starting to build up a little bit of energy coming off of that Leo new moon. And Leo Sun is of course it's a proud energy. It's very prominent. We're all wanting to kind of like enjoy ourselves, have fun. But Leo can be ambitious as well. It's very energetic. So we're dealing with that energy being in the kind of middle of summer in the northern hemisphere. But adding that kind of waxing crescent Virgo moon at this point is kind of nice, because it adds this really grounded, earth energy. And Virgo is very practical. It's very, detail oriented. So it's supporting us in being organized and planning things, and kind of adding some structure to things. So combining Virgo moon with Leo sun is really great for being, being productive or getting something done. You can be creative and spontaneous with the Leo sun, but also practical and orderly or disciplined with the Virgo moon. So this can be a very excellent combination. I think I said in the last forecast, this is especially excellent for doing anything like physically oriented, being physically active, spending time in nature, being productive. All that kind of stuff is supported by this sun and moon combination. We do have two aspects today. Really, it's just one aspect though. So technically, the two aspects are Mars conjunct North Node at 18 degrees Taurus, and Mars conjunct Uranus at 18 degrees Taurus. So basically, I would say it's just kind of one thing going on here. As you can see, it's a triple conjunction: Mars, Uranus, North Node, all at 18 degrees Taurus. I did kind of cover this in the intro, but basically, basically, again, we have the two most volatile planets coming together. So Uranus is bringing, energy of earthquakes. It's bringing epiphanies. Uranus brings a perspective change. That's why Uranus, if it's such a dramatic, unpredictable energy and it brings about new things, you might think Uranus would be kind of a fiery energy, but it actually is an air energy. It's at home in Aquarius. And the reason for that is because Uranus does bring about newness, but it's mostly a change in your perception, okay? Rather than an immediate change in your situation. Okay, so for instance, Uranus being conjunct the North Node basically in Taurus, that means that we may all go through a kind of global perception shift regarding our finances, okay? And it may or may not be the finances or the resources that are actually changing. What's really key here is that the way we're looking at it is changing. Our understanding, our awareness, the paradigms that we are a part of, or the beliefs that we have, all of that is changing. And when you change your awareness, you change your consciousness, you change your point of view, that can be very powerful. That can be equally, if not even more powerful to your circumstances actually changing, because it changes your experience. Okay, so we're all having a collective change in our experience regarding finances, money, resources, etc. Mars is there kind of just adding fuel to the fire. Now, Mars is a straight up fiery energy. It does bring just dramatic, like physical change that I think is a lot more easy to understand. It's a more relatable energy, or more simplistic energy, I guess I could say. So Mars is kind of like triggering things. It may bring about some physical changes in our kind of physical environments. This could also have to do with like natural events like storms, earthquakes, etc. You know, especially with Taurus being an Earth sign and bringing about this volatility. You can expect all that. And like I said, North Node is about evolution. It puts this kind of positive spin on things. But I definitely don't want to underestimate the you know, like we are only human, we do what we can to survive. And when this typically reliable area of Taurus, you know, regarding nature and money and all these things, you know, these things are usually stable. And when we add this degree of volatility and turbulence, sudden changes in these areas, it can be distressing. So I don't want to I want to stress that yes, this is positive. I think it's North Node energy. We are evolving. It's important to gain this new awareness that Uranus is kind of correlating, or maybe bringing us on some level. That can be good, but even Uranian energy can be distressing because it can be difficult gaining awareness, because with that awareness comes responsibility. And that's where the change truly happens. You know, once you change your awareness, that's when your actions could therefore change, but that's up to you. That's up to free will. Okay, that was a good kind of rant, I think. But yeah, otherwise for Monday, you know, going back to that Leo Sun with Virgo Moon, I really love this combination for starting out the week, starting with that kind of fiery energy of Leo Sun, and Mercury still at this point, but also that productivity of Virgo Moon. I think anyone starting their week on Monday, it should be a nice start, especially because we're beginning the lunar cycle. It's a nice kind of beginning here. Let's jump to Tuesday, August 2nd. Okay, so so something kind of interesting, you know, I always set these for Eastern Standard Time just because I think most of my viewers are around that time zone. So of course you can always adjust for that time zone if you are, you know, however many multiple time zones away from here. But as for the Eastern Standard Time zone, the moon enters Libra almost at exactly midnight on the night of, you know, Monday, August 1st, going into August 2nd. So for the sake of this forecast, I'm just going to say moon is in Virgo all day Monday, and moon is in Libra basically all day Tuesday, just to kind of simplify things here a little bit. So Tuesday, now we have moon in Libra. This is going to be very, very nice, very beautiful. Libra sextiles Leo. Libra is 2 signs away from Leo, and whenever you have signs that are 2 signs away from one another, they form a sextile. A sextile is a harmonious aspect. It basically just means that these energies are different enough to benefit one another, but similar enough to blend together very easily. Another way of looking at this would be to look at the phase of the moon. At this point, the moon will be a waxing crescent moon. It won't be just a sliver anymore. It'll have some kind of meat to it, so to speak. So whenever you kind of see this crescent moon looking the way it does on Tuesday, this typically isn't a good omen. It shows that there's this kind of harmony to things. Things are working out well. Of course, we have to look to the other planets to see what the kind of bigger picture is with what everything else that's going on. But all other things being equal, the sun and the moon they're in a very harmonious aspect together. Moon is in an air sign of Libra. Kind of just adds some we're feeling more diplomatic or receptive. We're a little bit observant, and on all this energy combines with the Leo Sun very well together because we have both the fire and the air. Air fuels the fire. We can be very maybe proud and putting ourselves out there and projecting our energy with the Leo Sun, but also diplomatic and receptive to others with the Libra Moon. So this is a really powerful combination, especially for like a kind of party energy or social energy. However, going back, just revisiting this like triple conjunction that I talked about in Taurus, there is a little bit more activity that actually happens on Tuesday with that. So on Tuesday, we have Venus technically making two aspects, but really it's kind of one aspect. Venus will sextile Mars from 19 degrees Cancer to Mars, which is at 19 degrees Taurus. And just before that, actually, Venus will also sextile Uranus, of course, both at 18 degrees of their respective signs. So a simpler way of saying that would be Venus at 18 to 19 degrees Cancer is sextiling this triple conjunction of North Node Uranus and Mars, all at 18 to 19 degrees Taurus on Tuesday. So what does that mean? So I think this even adds more of a focus onto our financial situation. Venus often has to do with our finances as well as relationships. It has to do with desire in general. I've talked about how in Cancer our desire is focused on the familiar. We're focusing on we're desiring whatever's kind of more familiar to us. Of course, that's on a generic level, encompassing everyone, encompassing like society as a whole. That's what we're wanting. We're wanting to be more conservative, go with whatever we know to be true, closer friends or family, etc. But as Venus sextiles this triple conjunction, it's kind of supporting this area. This adds a lot of positivity to this triple conjunction as well, because Mars, Uranus, and North Node they were all just conjunct and are still within orb of this conjunction on Tuesday. They were all conjunct in Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. And so the way that Venus aspects, or in this case Venus does aspect the triple conjunction, this makes a big difference. And to get into how that works just a little bit more, Mars, Uranus, and North Node are in Taurus. So Taurus is the home of Venus. And Venus, in this case, has to act as a kind of caretaker, if that makes sense, for these planets. And depending on where she is, she may or may not do a good job of that. Now, in this case, Venus is in Cancer, and not only that, but she's sextiling Mars, Uranus, North Node. So in this case, she's a very excellent caretaker. She is supporting this energy. And Venus being a benefic makes this all the more sweet. Venus typically brings abundance, pleasure, desire, etc. So I think this is really good. I still think that this change can be very volatile. It can be difficult to adapt to. It can be distressing. But there is this overwhelming positivity in the astrology, North Node, and then the sextile with Venus. So maybe these changes are difficult, but sometimes even if you have like a corrupt system in place, sometimes removing that system or, destroying the corruption it is still destructive. It still is difficult to deal with, if that makes sense. It's still something that must be adjusted to in a massive way. I think that may be part of what we're dealing with. I feel like we're on the fringe. We're so close to this potential really big shift, and we're going to really see that at the beginning of next year. But for now, we're kind of seeing the beginning, like ripplings of this. I think the beginning, like the ground is starting to just shake a tiny bit. We're getting some changes here, so this is positive. There's some kind of positive, and by positive I mean like there's something changing that is good. It is true. It is supporting higher efficiency, and it is just. Something regarding our finances, our economy. It's changing in a positive direction. But again, it is still change. It may hurt in the short term, but we're on a positive trajectory, if that makes sense. Okay, and yeah, let's kind of again bring it back to a more shallow side here. So for Tuesday, really nice again, just for kind of a more generic outlook for how you'll be feeling today. It looks good again. I mean, you can't beat Moon in Libra, sextiling Sun in Cancer. It's just, excuse me, Sun in Leo. It's a nice, warm, positive aspect. These are two yang signs, so we're kind of light and playful today. Now, of course, there's those like economic changes that may be occurring, but on a more mundane level, people are generally in a good mood as we're going through this. So that's good as well. That's always good. Let's jump forward to Wednesday, August 3rd here. Okay, so for Wednesday, August 3rd, Moon continues cruising through Libra, and we actually get the exact sextile aspect on Wednesday. So, even on Tuesday, Moon was already in Libra. It was already beginning to sextile the Sun, at least by sign, if not by degree. But Wednesday, that aspect becomes exact. Looks like in the kind of early morning Eastern Standard Time. So especially in the morning, this is going to be this like the peak of this harmonious aspect. A lot of harmony, especially considering Moon is in Libra, which is already a kind of harmonious diplomatic sign. Moon in particular, when it's in Libra, supports us thinking through our feelings before acting. And I think that does create this like tremendous amount of harmony and balance where we're not too quick to act. We think before we speak. And so especially on a physical level, it's like we can be more sure of ourselves in a way because we can trust that we're all thinking before we're speaking, or we're at least more likely to do that than we otherwise would with Moon in Libra. So that's really beautiful, and it's even doubly beautiful when you factor in Moon is sextiling the Sun. So I would expect people to be in a generally pretty good mood. And again, this is really good because we are in very interesting times as usual. There is a lot of change going on in the background with our money and stuff. So, I definitely, if we can keep our wits and keep a positive outlook, I think that's always important regardless of what's happening around us. It doesn't do any good to stress about things. It doesn't do any good to panic. If we can always just use this like Sun in Leo, Moon in Libra, these are such light, kind of playful energies, so easygoing and optimistic. So I think this is kind of the exact attitude to have in this situation. So I think it's really excellent that these energies are supporting that. So yeah, it looks like a really beautiful Wednesday, just generally speaking here. All right, and then Thursday, August 4th. We have two of the inner planets, so to speak, switching signs. We have Moon leaving Libra and entering Scorpio, and then we also have Mercury leaving Leo and entering Virgo. So let's talk about Virgo first. So Mercury entering Virgo, of course, it's in domicile and exalted. So I would actually argue that Mercury is stronger in Virgo than any other planet is in any other sign, just because Mercury is the only planet that is in domicile and exalted in the same sign. On the flip side, Mercury is more challenged than any other planet in Pisces, but that's a story for another day. Again, Mercury in Virgo, this is really excellent because planets in domicile are just simpler to deal with. Now, there are different pros and cons to each and every planetary position, but when you have a planet in its kind of natural sign like this, it just makes things simpler. Mercury represents the way we think, the way we communicate, how we approach like detailed stuff. It also has a lot to do with the rhythm of our day, how we approach like errands and planning and things like that. And in Virgo, what better area to have all of that energy than in Virgo, which is also having to do with planning. Virgo's very grounded. It's very grounded being an earth sign, but then it's also very attentive to detail. So this is kind of the strongest energy for that kind of cerebral side of our lives. So this is really excellent. Again, especially if you have any planets in Virgo, those planets will be affected by Mercury's transiting through there. You will experience kind of peak like cerebral energy as Mercury passes through there. And then flipping back over to the moon. So Moon does enter Scorpio. Now this is a very different story. Moon is much more at home, I would say, in Libra. Technically it's not in domicile or anything like that, but Moon in Libra is such a peaceful, tranquil energy. Now as it switches to Scorpio, this is very different. Moon will enter Scorpio about, just before midday. Looks like 11:30ish a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Excuse me. And as it does so, this changes the dynamic for two reasons. One is because Moon is in in fall in Scorpio, so this is a very challenged placement. Moon represents how we feel, our beliefs, it's kind of like our core identity. And when we're talking about transits like this, it's how we're feeling on a day-to-day kind of level as a whole. Now with Scorpio, Scorpio is like the most intense, the most emotionally intense, I should say, sign that we have. And so that's why Moon is in fall in Scorpio. It's, we're on this like survival mentality. We're looking, Scorpio is kind of a pessimistic sign. It kind of feels restless. It doesn't feel at ease really. So this would show that, as a collective, on a collective level here, we're all kind of feeling a little bit uneasy. We may be feeling very strongly though, having kind of intense emotions. And that was a long kind of tangent here, but on the other reason why Moon in Scorpio is very different than Moon in Libra in this case is that rather than sextiling the Sun, it's beginning to form a square aspect to the Sun in Leo. So this is a harsh aspect. It's contentious. So I would expect as we gear up for the weekend on Friday, the energies, the vibes actually become a lot more tense. I think part of this is that we may be realizing the effects of the triple conjunction in Taurus, because Moon has come around and it's beginning to oppose this triple conjunction, which is beginning to loosen up, but it's still there in Taurus. So that means that our focus, especially emotionally, intuitively, on a core identity level, we are beginning to become much more aware of these financial changes. And it looks like we feel restless about that. Like maybe we're really beginning to understand what's going on more so. And yeah, Scorpio is kind of notorious for feeling like it has to control its outside environment or outside circumstances because it feels out of control on the inside. So all of that we may be feeling a little bit. And with Moon squaring the Sun, we're mixing water with fire. These things don't really mix very well. You get steam, which makes things cloudy. You can't see very well. It becomes confusing. And again, Moon in Scorpio and Sun in Leo, these are both such kind of fiery energies, so passionate, so fierce, but they clash together. They don't mix well. So yeah, we may be all a little bit kind of rigid and stubborn, but also quick to change our minds and feeling passionate, feeling restless. I think on the plus side, combining these energies, it is ideal for making a very dramatic change. Now I say that, and like when I say ideal, I would still support, thinking things through if you can. Don't get like too crazy because this is just pushing us to change dramatically, potentially, especially if our planets happen to line up, if our personal planets line up with this first quarter moon that's beginning to form. We could be very impulsive. So on the one hand, we could make some dramatic changes that we maybe haven't thought through yet. But if we are kind of attuned to ourselves and we're thinking things through, and especially with intuition is very important, I think, with this dynamic. And acting from the heart. Leo has to do with heart. Moon in Scorpio has a lot to do with intuition. So if we're kind of combining all of these different faculties, and making sure that what we're doing is true for us, then I think we can rapidly accelerate and maybe make some dramatic changes that are very functional in our lives. Of course, that just depends on your situation. With all that being said, let's jump to Friday here because I'm already kind of getting ahead of myself here. But yeah, the attitudes definitely change as we get closer to Friday. So Friday, August 5th, we have the exact first quarter moon. Now, like I was saying, we are already feeling this on Thursday. But this becomes exact on Friday. So this is like the peak of this aspect. It's a first quarter square. The first quarter square is the most volatile part of the lunar cycle. I would argue even more so than the full moon. Full moons are, famous. They're notorious for crazy stuff happening, more, accidents or more people in hospitals. But I think the first quarter moon is often overlooked. And the first quarter moon is really a time for making change. It pushes us, makes us feel restless, anxious, and stressed. But that is only the case because it shows that the status quo is no longer good enough. There needs to be some kind of change. Maybe there's been some change in our environment, and we have to adjust to that. We must be adaptable. We must make change. So that's what always happens every first quarter moon. We experience this once a month. In this case, though, like I said, first quarter moon in Scorpio, this is a fierce combination, combining, mixing or clashing Scorpio moon with Leo sun. Neither of these energies will give way. They're both excellent fighters. Maybe Scorpio slightly more so in a defensive capacity, but these are both like fierce, passionate energies. They're both fiery. I know Scorpio is a water sign, but it's ruled by Mars. If you've ever met a Scorpio, I would say are fiery people. So these are fiery energies, but we're also mixing fire with water, which don't really mix. So this can kind of be like an explosion, like a combustion. But where it gets really interesting, I think I alluded to this in the intro. The first quarter moon will happen at exactly 13 degrees Scorpio, and the south node you can see here is at 18 degrees Scorpio. So that's an orb of only 5 degrees. Basically the first quarter moon is lighting up the south node. It's hitting this nodal axis here. You can see these red lines right through the middle here. And so this kind of means multiple things here. So this means, again, our attention is being brought to these dramatic changes that have just happened this week in our finances, in our economy, in a lot of the global structure of things. And having the sun it's almost exactly squaring the nodes. It will do so, I believe, next week, actually, to be precise. But it's already stepping, within orb of making a T-square with the nodes, which gets really interesting. So what this means is that we are halfway between eclipse seasons. We just had one back in May, and then we will have one again in like November-ish, like October, November. So we're at this like kind of checkpoint halfway. I talked about this last week because Mercury just crossed this point last week. Now as the sun is beginning to approach this point, and the only reason why I'm talking about it now is this first quarter moon, it lights up this T-square that's beginning to form. We'll really feel this going into next week as well when the sun makes that exact square to the nodes. But this is a checkpoint. It's halfway between, it's a turning point between the eclipse seasons. The eclipse seasons, which really shake everything up. We are about as far away from those as we can get. But now... It's like a checkpoint, and it's interesting because typically there's not a lot of dramatic things happening at that point. It's more of a subtle type of thing. But because this first quarter moon is positioned in such a volatile sign of Scorpio, which, has to do with dramatic change, I think, and it's lighting up the south node, this could provoke some kind of event, some kind of backlash, especially related to economics, finances. The Scorpio-Taurus axis is lit up here with the nodes, and the Scorpio-Taurus axis has everything to do with possession, what we possess, and that applies not only to finances, but also our people, relationships. What are our possessions? What do we invest in? And again, what do we invest in financially? What do we invest in with our feeling, with other people, with our relationships as well? All of that is up for some dramatic change with first quarter moon close to the south node opposing this triple conjunction. All of that could change very rapidly, and it shows that too that we're at a turning point with all of that. Oh, and I wanted to explain too, we talk about the nodes a lot, but really quick here. So when the moon is crossing the south node, and to be specific, these nodes are lunar nodes. So when the moon crosses the south node, I'll explain what that means. It means that the moon is basically plunging into the underworld. So our whole solar system is on a plane. It's like on a disk, basically. The planets are orbiting around the sun at about the same level relative to each other, roughly, not exactly. But they do go a little bit above the disk, so to speak, and then they'll dip below it, and then they'll kind of dip back above it, and that's what the nodes are. The nodes are the point where a planet crosses that plane, that disk. So in this case, the moon is crossing the south node, which means that the moon is traveling down, so to speak, in space, like below. It's traveling downward relative to where all the other planets are in space, if that makes sense. It's plunging beneath the disk, so to speak. A little graphic would really be handy, I guess, for showing this. But basically, this is dark, just like if you take it into a kind of like metaphor, it is a dark thing, like a planet plunging beneath, plunging downward, plunging into the underworld, so to speak. And it's kind of interesting. Scorpio is a sign which has themes related to underworld, ruled by Pluto, etc. Pluto, which guards the underworld. Scorpio does have to do with like rare earth minerals going down, tunneling to the depth of something to the core. Um, so this is dark, is what I'm trying to say. Like I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It's this dark kind of storm cloud, so to speak. Um, going with this like analogy of astrology being weather, we're in the middle of like summer in the northern hemisphere. Sun is in Leo, sun is very powerful, so it's like we're in this generally very sunny time, but we have this really dark storm cloud rolling through. And storm clouds are not evil; they're not bad. They typically represent change, which is kind of funny. They typically just represent hot air trying to disperse itself from the equator. It's just about change, basically. But it can be dark, it could be a storm cloud, it could be very volatile. But just like a storm, this will pass. This is the moon we're talking about. Moon changes signs probably about as fast as the weather changes. It's not a long term. This isn't a long term storm by any means that we're dealing with here. So okay, so all that being said, yes, this is volatile. It's a volatile Friday. Not gonna lie. I'm trying to, now. I've talked about kind of the difficulty of it or the challenge. So now I'm thinking about the more positive side. I mean, if you're a person that like gets a thrill off of dramatic change, then this could be really fun for you. Some people like change. They are very adaptable. They thrive with that, especially like mutable signs or maybe fire signs to some extent with what's going on here. Um, Now, if you have fixed signs, especially Scorpio and Taurus, but also Leo or Aquarius, any planets that you have from, I would say, from like 10 to 20 degrees or so, you may experience a huge change. You may experience a crossroads in your life at this point because there is a major kind of, it's a little bit loose, but there is a major T square here. So depending on how that falls in your chart, you may literally be at a crossroads where you have to decide between different paths. Do I move here or do I stay where I currently live? Do I choose this job or that job? It could be like a relationship thing. It really just depends on your chart. But for anyone with those kind of fixed energies, you may have to make a massive choice or a massive change, and that will be hard for you because you're a fixed sign. You don't typically, want to change everything, but that is something. And for the rest of us as well, this is a big deal. There's a major shift happening. I think on the positive side, this is about evolution. The nodes are about evolution. The Scorpio, Uranus, these energies all have to do with evolution, pushing forward. And the sun is in Leo to show us that, the sun is fixed fire. It is consistent. The sun will rise no matter what happens. The sun will always set and rise every day, knock on wood. But that's typically the way of things. So there is this consistency behind things that, life goes on. Things are changing dramatically, but life goes on. The sun is in this kind of happy, positive sign of Leo, I think, to kind of support us. And then again, Mercury's in Virgo supporting us as well. We have this acuity. We have this mental acuity that is really excellent for embracing and adapting to these changes that are happening. Okay, that was a mouthful. Let's go to Saturday, August 6th. So on Saturday we have Moon switching over from Scorpio to Sagittarius about midday Eastern Standard Time. Okay, so this is just, it's so funny. So there's a massive shift between Friday and Saturday. So yeah, I guess looking back, it's almost like Thursday we start to feel turbulent. Friday it's this all-out storm. And then the storm kind of breaks up by Saturday. Now, we may still be dealing with some changes in our world. You can see Uranus is still pretty much conjunct North Node. They are still both at 18 degrees Taurus. But by this time, Mars is a few degrees ahead. It's at 21 degrees Taurus. And then now Moon has left Scorpio. It's left left the South Node and entered Sagittarius, which is again, it's a completely different vibe. This changes the aspect the sign of the moon makes to the sun. It's also changing the lunar phase. So the lunar phase is not so much a first quarter moon anymore. It's beginning to start to become a waxing gibbous moon, which basically what that means over the weekend, the moon will be like 2/3 full, so to speak. The right 2/3 roughly of the moon will be full. That's how I would describe it. And this is a good omen. Now, we won't quite yet really feel it on Saturday, but this is the beginning of it. Moon is in Sagittarius. Sagittarius trines Leo. These are both fire signs. These are both upbeat signs that want to have fun, be lively, eat, drink, and be merry. You know, these are kind of hedonistic signs. So with Sun in Leo and Moon in Sagittarius, the main downside is that we could overindulge. We could be too impulsive or reckless, spontaneous. Like, we could be treating ourselves too much, or we could be too quick to act because we're overly confident, especially for you fire signs out there that are already naturally very confident, generally speaking. Or maybe impulsive or spontaneous would be some better words. You may be overly quick to act, but with all that, putting all that aside, though, these are generally positive, outgoing energies, and especially with the aspect that the moon is beginning to step into relative to the sun. This is a strong, stable, fiery kind of dynamic. So very different. I think maybe we're pulling ourselves up out of this storm, like the storm is breaking and the sun is coming out again. You know, it's just such a dramatic change going from Scorpio to Sagittarius. These are both signs that are very passionate. They give, it's all or nothing with Scorpio or Sagittarius, you know, on Saturday with the moon changing signs. But the main difference, I think, is in the morning with that Scorpio moon, we may be feeling more on that survival mentality that I talked about. We're more looking at the glass half empty because we're wanting to fix things and adapt and like learn about stuff. You know, we're in this ambitious mode because we feel this unrest. And then halfway through the day, when Moon enters Sagittarius, the main difference is that Sagittarius is such an optimistic sign. We have these high expectations. You know, we want things to be larger than life again. Now, of course, this is all relative to your own personal astrology, but generally speaking, that's where the kind of collective consciousness would be, I would say. So it's really interesting. It's like a happy start to the week, and then this kind of storm cloud as we realize what has just changed. And then I think we adjust to it, and we have this pretty positive disposition once again shortly afterwards. So yeah, definitely some good stuff here. I will say too, this keeps happening, but this chart by this point is pretty devoid of air. Pretty much, I guess, since Thursday when Moon entered Scorpio and left Libra, and then going through the entire weekend, there's not a lot of air planets, just Saturn in Aquarius. So when we lack air, things can feel stifled. Like, you know, things can be heavy, dense. You know, things can be a little bit too serious. So that is one downside of this chart, generally lacking air. But other than that, you can see the planets are all pretty scattered still. So other than that lacking of air, this is a well-rounded chart. So yeah, for Saturday, I do like this. It does look like a good day to go out, be active, be friendly, be social. You know, fire signs love that. Fire signs love that physical activity. They love being social, or you know, being physically active as well, being athletic, that type of thing. Fire signs love that. Fire signs love a good competition as well. So anything like that would be really great for Saturday, as long as you've like recovered from this maybe kind of hangover from these denser, more intense energies from Friday. I think anything like that would be good for Saturday. And lastly, let's jump to Sunday, August 7th. So Moon continues through Sagittarius, and this is where we get that exact trine aspect between the Sagittarius Moon and the Leo Sun. So Sunday looks really even more actually excellent for like a good party, a good social event, or maybe being physically active, being competitive, all that good kind of fire sign stuff. Both Leo and Sagittarius have to do with like celebration. Leo is like the middle of summer. Sagittarius is kind of like where Thanksgiving is, and it's right before Christmas, so it's that like celebratory holiday feel. Really with both of them, just in kind of different ways. So both of these Sun and Moon, and the aspect between them is supporting that like celebratory, let's have fun, let's kind of just be a little bit wild or playful. It's supporting all of that. These are two proud, fiery signs here. We do have two aspects on Sunday. We have Mars at 22 degrees Taurus, and it makes a square to Saturn at 22 degrees Aquarius. So this is interesting. I think it still has to do with these recent economic developments that happened earlier this week. It looks like, well, Mars is initiating this aspect, but I still think it could be the government represented by, and this could be like multiple governments, world governments, etc., international governments. Those would be represented by Saturn and Aquarius. It's this like authoritarian structure to things. It's the future. It's structure that is applied through social mechanisms or technological mechanisms like the internet. That is clashing with Mars and Taurus. Mars and Taurus representing these the economic instability, the changes in our finances. So I almost could see it as like different governments around the world reacting to the financial change and trying to apply some pressure, trying to get some control over things. But I can't say for sure. I mean, I guess I'll say, I think in this case, especially approaching it from like an ancient, the way ancient astrologers would work, this looks like the world governments in this case would succeed in gaining some temporary control, at least as long as this current dynamic is in place here, which won't be long. But this does show, you know, like Saturn isn't domicile in Aquarius, so this is showing that there is successful authoritarian kind of control through those social and technological mechanisms. Real quick side note, this will change dramatically early next year when Saturn enters Pisces and there's like a global collapse of that structure. But for now, that structure is very strong with Saturn and domicile in Aquarius. Mars, on the other hand, is in detriment in Taurus. Mars is relatively weak there. So that's why I say this would show that I think the world governments will, from their eyes, they will successfully respond to these changes, generally speaking, of course. And I guess you could get more information by looking at each nation's chart if you really wanted to go there. But on a broad level, whoever's in charge right now will succeed in the short term in maintaining that power and that control regarding these economic changes here. On a much different note, we have another aspect happening on Sunday. That is Venus at 25 degrees Cancer, and it will trine Neptune at 25 degrees Pisces. This is so different. A trine is a much more harmonious aspect, and these are two different planets in both in water signs. So, okay, so Neptune in Pisces, for many years now, has been kind of supporting us all indulging in our own fantasies. So this has been we've been really delving deep here into fantasy and different spirituality and different beliefs with Neptune and Pisces. And as Venus makes this trine here, this will really channel this into what we're desiring in the moment, what we are desiring, what we're seeking pleasure in, the way we desire like aesthetics or like physical pleasures. All of that is going to take on a spiritual connotation, if that makes sense. So this would be really, really great for embracing your creative side, maybe like channeling or meditating, and by channel I mean like anything like artistic. If you're whatever medium it is, if you're sitting down doing something creative, or water signs also have to do with rest periods. If you are, maybe you're just taking a break from your work and spending some time in nature or doing something slow and relaxing, that could be really excellent for channeling, inviting that intuition or that inspiration to come kind of out of nowhere. But it can reinvigorate your approach to your work or whatever it is you're taking a break from. So that could be it, or being very creative, artistic at this time would be supported. So yeah, really interesting dynamic on Sunday. Like there's this global economic crisis, economic shift, government scrambling for control, and meanwhile we can be kind of spiritual maybe. Yeah, really wild what we get thrown at us here. But that's the gist of what I have for you this week. Next week, come back. I do have there is like the full moon in Aquarius happening at 19 degrees, so that will be really interesting. I think this is actually one of my personal favorite full moons. Really bringing to life that Leo Aquarius axis here. This is fixed fire with fixed air. These are two. I think this axis represents the culmination of the whole zodiac, Leo and Aquarius, the 5th and 11th sign. So we will get into that, and then Venus will also enter Leo next week. So that is something to look forward to too, depending on your own astrology. But that's what I have for you this week. So hope that was helpful, and I will see you next week.